We have stories about killer clowns and tales of boarding houses that you wouldn't want to stay at. Here are the top 5 horror books that should be turned into movies. Number 5 on this list is House of Furies. This book was written by Madeline Rue, and I think this one has some strong potential to be a classic horror movie if it was ever made into one. Epic Reads writes, after escaping a harsh school where punishment was the lesson of the day, 17-year-old Louisa Ditton is thrilled to find employment as a maid at a boarding house. But soon after her arrival at Cold Thistle House, Louisa begins to realize that the house's mysterious owner, Mr. Morningside, is providing much more than lodging for his guests. Far from a place of rest, the house is a place of judgment, and Mr. Morningside and his unusual staff are meant to execute their own justice on those who are past being saved. Louisa begins to fear for a young man named Lee who is not like the other guests. He's charismatic and kind, and Louisa knows that it may be up to her to save him from an untimely judgment. But in this house of distortions and lies, how can Louisa be sure who to trust? I am getting some serious Get Out vibes with this horror movie. Like, not the same thing where people steal the bodies of other people, but the idea that you go into a house that you should be safe at and then slowly realize that something isn't quite right. It's the realization that's always the scariest part about horror films. Wondering what's going on and why things are happening the way that they are. I imagine that we would get a lot of that as an audience watching a movie like this. I also think that the character of Mr. Morningside, if casted correctly, could be an instant classic. Hopefully a film producer sees the same sort of potential in this book that I do, and we get it to the screen very soon. Number 4 on this list is Last Things. Now this one is less of a keep you up at night, never sleep again horror, and more on the side of fantasy, thriller, adventure thing. I still think it's deserving of a nod though, based on just how successful it was. It was written by Jacqueline West, who is a New York Times best-selling author. This book almost earned her a second title on that list. Epic Reads says, high school senior Anders Thorson is unusually gifted. His band, Last Things, is legendary in their northern Minnesota hometown. With guitar skills that would amaze even if he weren't only 18, Anders is the focus of head-turning admiration. And Thea Malcolm, a newcomer to the insular town, is one of his admirers. Thea seems to turn up everywhere Anders goes. Gigs at the local coffee house, guitar lessons, even in the woods near Anders' home. When strange things start happening to Anders, blame immediately falls on Thea. But is she trying to hurt him or save him? Can he trust a girl who doesn't seem to know the difference between dreams and reality? And how much are they both willing to sacrifice to get what they want? Maybe it's just because I love rock and roll, but I feel like having the musical element to a horror thriller movie would be super cool. I could also see this doing very well with a young adult audience. Cast one of the Sprouse twins as the leading role and you have yourself a blockbuster for sure. Number 3 on this list is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. This book is written by Kirsten White and actually became a New York Times bestseller. Epic Reads says, Elizabeth Lavenza hasn't had a proper meal in weeks. Her thin arms are covered with bruises from her caregiver, and she is on the verge of being thrown into the streets until she's brought to the home of Victor Frankenstein, an unsmiling, solitary boy who has everything except a friend. Victor is her escape from misery. Elizabeth does everything she can to make herself indispensable, and it works. She's taken in by the Frankenstein family and rewarded with a warm bed, delicious food, and dresses of the finest silk. Soon, she and Victor are inseparable, but her new life comes at a price. As the years pass, Elizabeth's survival depends on managing Victor's dangerous temper and entertaining his every whim no matter how depraved. Behind her blue eyes and sweet smile lies the calculating heart of a girl determined to stay alive no matter the cost, as the world she knows is consumed by darkness. We're talking about a dark character drama here, folks. If you get the right actors in to play these roles, then this movie could be an amazing character-driven thriller. Watching as the relationship between Victor and Elizabeth slowly deteriorates and becomes more and more toxic. Seeing those early warning signs and knowing that it will become terrible later. And then strapping in and watching Elizabeth try and stay alive. Everything about this story is dark and unsettling. Let's toss a camera in front of it and put it on film. Number 2 on this list is A Clown in a Cornfield. This book is written by Adam Cesar, the first time he's ever written a story in this genre. A very good debut if you ask me, because the story was met with a ton of success. It's a short book, only 352 pages long, but what it packs into those 352 pages is nothing short of thrilling. Epic Reads writes, Quinn Maybrook and her father have moved to a tiny, boring Kettle Springs to find a fresh start. But what they don't know is that ever since the Bay Pen corn syrup factory shut down, Kettle Springs has cracked in half. On one side are the adults, who are desperate to make Kettle Springs great again, and on the other side are the kids, who want to have fun, make prank videos, and get out of Kettle Springs as quick as they can. Kettle Springs is caught in a battle between old and new, tradition and progress. It's a fight that looks like it will destroy the town, until Friendo, the Bay Pen mascot, a creepy clown in a pork pie hat, goes homicidal and decides that the only way for Kettle Springs to grow back is to cull the rotten crop of kids who live there now. This book deals with some really pertinent themes when it looks at that fight of new and old. It also deals with a homicidal clown serial killer that wants to kill off all the youth in the town. This is the perfect book for a horror film. We could watch the slow decline into madness from the perspective of the serial killer, and then also see as a young Quinn Maybrook tries to establish herself in the town, but starts to realize something isn't quite right. Clearly, I'm not the only one who thinks this book needs to become a movie, because the movie rights have actually already been optioned to Temple Hill Entertainment. These guys were behind Twilight, the Maze Runner series, and A Fault in Our Stars, and honestly a bunch of other movies too. I can totally see this movie being a good vibe for these guys, because we get a lot of teenage themes, which this production company clearly connects with, but then also a whole aspect of being a thriller, which they also like. Look out for Clown in a Cornfield when it does take to the theaters, because something tells me it's going to be a good one. And finally, number 1 on this list is Anna Dressed in Blood. Anna Dressed in Blood is written by Kender Blake. The entire story is full of creepy stuff, and if you're a regular viewer of this channel, then I feel like you would definitely be up your alley. Epic Reads says, Cass Lowood has inherited an unusual vocation. He kills the dead. So did his father before him, until he was gruesomely murdered by a ghost who sought to kill. Now, armed with his father's mysterious and deadly ability, Cass travels the country with his kitchen witch mother and their spirit-sniffing cat. They follow legends and local lore, destroy the murderous dead, and keep pesky things like the future and friends at bay. Searching for a ghost the locals call Anna Dressed in Blood, Cass expects the usual track, hunt, kill. What he finds instead is a girl entangled in curses and rage, a ghost like he's never faced before. She still wears the dress she wore on the day of her brutal murder in 1958, once white, now stained red and dripping with blood. Since her death, Anna has killed any and every person who has dared to step into her deserted Victorian home. This would be an epic action-adventure horror movie in my opinion. Also, just this whole premise is literally badass. A hunter who kills the dead? Like, they're already dead guys, but then he has to kill them again, so they finally die. That's just an awesome idea to play with, and I feel like there is such a good world to explore there. This needs to become a movie as soon as possible. But there you have it, guys. That is our list of the top 5 horror books that should be turned into movies. Comment down below what you thought about this list and some other creepy horror stories that maybe you guys have read. Also, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. I've been your host, Nicholas Playlog, and I will catch you next time.